Hello and welcome to BCM241 Media Ethnographies. This week we are thinking about the relationship between ethnography and content production, both in the broadcast media industries and the emerging creative industries enabled by the internet paradigm. Joining me today for the conversation is Susan Maloney. It's brilliant to have Susan teaching into this subject, and she's provided a massive level of support, including authoring the wonderful Green Book tutorial guides in the Moodle page. And Susan has also done a huge amount of work in this subject previously and populated an incredible amount of material in the Moodle page. Susan has been infinitely patient with me as I tackle the design for this subject. And as you may know from her bio on the Moodle page, Susan has previously worked in advertising and video production. She's worked with international clients like Intel, Cisco, Hewlett-Packard, and Chrysler. And she also has experience with television production. And welcome, Susan. Hello. Television production. Welcome, Susan. So today, it's brilliant to be able to have this kind of conversation with you. Do you want to tell us just a little bit about your kind of professional experience with ethnography? Do you want to tell us just a little bit about your career experience with ethnography?
Sure. In your career. At the time, I was not necessarily actually aware that it was ethnography that I was doing. I often look back now and think back to the practices that I was employing at the time, and a lot of the research that we were undertaking was actually ethnographic. So whether that's preparing to pitch to land a new account, or to write a script, or to research on behalf of your client, or to create a story, a documentary, or web content for a client.
You mentioned interview there. We haven't talked a lot about interviewing as an ethnographic technique, but obviously it's one of the core foundations of ethnography. And I like how you mentioned there that it was both the kind of ethnographic practices made part of the content layer, but also all of the background stuff that would lead to the content layer.
Part of the content layer.
Do you have a kind of favorite instance or a memory that is very clear where this kind of practice?
Do you have a kind of favorite instance or a memory that is very clear where this kind of
memorably
practice
a TV pilot
create?
that I worked on? The corporation that I was working for, we set out to attract an author who'd written a book of inspirational stories. And so first we had to speak to her about her book and the stories within the book. And we won a contract with her, and then we went on to speak to the people, a couple of the people that the inspirational stories were based around. So we went up to the Wild Horse Sanctuary, and we went to a submarine creator up in San Leandro, in Northern California. The Wild Horse Sanctuary. And we interviewed those people about their stories. We conducted a pre-interview and warmed them up, told them what we would be asking them, how we planned on representing them, what the show was about. And then when we were actually there on site, we were gathering more footage as well as capturing the interviews with them. Once we had all of that footage in the can and we came back to edit and be in the studio, then we were still adding in more information. We were still conducting more research to flesh that out. So and we also identified patterns, points of significance. We plucked out important quotes to help carry the story and deliver on that idea of being inspirational. We plucked out important.
That's really interesting. I think we've talked a little bit in the subject about what you do when you've collected your data, in this case, the interview, and how your framework or your paradigmatic framework helps structure the results. So you're selecting bits out and you're putting it together with a specific framework. In that instance, you're dealing with a narrative framework, and obviously you want a kind of 3-act structure with kind of introduction and heading to a point of drama and then a conclusion for the narrative. And so that's the structure.
In that instance,
you're
dealing with
the narrative
framework, and obviously you want to.
I'm also kind of interested, and we have a couple of students who are kind of running kind of small businesses where they're actually interviewing clients in order to determine
structure.
What they want.
That material.
Have you had similar experience where you've had to kind of sit down and kind of
interested,
do a kind of conversation, do a kind of interview in order to extract,
running kind of small businesses,
the core
where
of what
they're
you want to try and deliver?
Interviewing clients.
Absolutely. So
what they
firstly, let me
have you had
step
similar
back
experience
to
where you've had to kind of sit down and kind of
pitching to
do a
client.
kind of conversation,
Right.
do a kind of interview,
the first phase of that,
the core of what you want to try and
was doing background research. So that involves firstly looking at who's currently producing for them, what's their brand about, how are they presenting themselves online and through various forms of media, and how can we improve on that? What can we offer them? And producing for them, and how can we speak to that? So before we'd even go into a meeting, we would be doing all of that background research, even putting together reports for our team, so that we could go in there and present and say, this is what we can do for you. If there was a particular project that they were canvassing businesses to pitch for the work, then we would research into the topic that they wanted us to investigate. And then once we landed the account or businesses gotten the work, we would then sometimes go into the workplace. We would get testimonials from clients that had worked with them to represent them in the way that they hoped to be represented. Sometimes the work that we did was actually research based, and it was to help them to resolve an issue, but it was in-house, and then then create internal communications to all of the staff, so you could see how the person that's over in Japan is struggling with this issue if you're not doing your part correctly on this end of things. But it was in-house.
I remember reading a book about the history of Nintendo and how Nintendo in the US employed ethnographers to go to Nintendo in Japan to try and make sense of their culture and how they produced such awesome games, and then come back and report their experience and how they made sense of that culture to Nintendo US so that they could better align their operations, because they were having kind of cultural conflicts. And I love this. I love this role of ethnography in Japan that is trying to make sense of a situation and then communicate that situation and then come back in such a way as that problems can be resolved. And that can lead to better content production. And it's not even touching about it. It's not even approaching their content directly, because they were having about addressing cultural conflicts. And I think that's a nice segue to talking about an event that you recently recently attended
that is
where
trying to make
ethnography
sense of a
was being used
situation
to
and then communicate
improve
that,
customer
that
experience.
situation in such a way as that
Yes,
problems can
that's
be
right.
resolved.
So
And
I'm
that,
a
you know,
part
that
of
can
the New
lead to
South Wales
better content
community
production.
of
And it's not even touching
CX
about, it's not even, you know,
professionals.
approaching the content directly.
And
It's about
I was
addressing
invited
issues.
to an online
And
event
I think that's a nice
they
segue to talking
gave a
about
presentation and
an
a
event
debrief
that you
on
recently attended,
customer research
where
in
ethnography
digital
was
product
being
design
used
and
to
delivery.
improve customer
And
experience.
their research became that's specifically right. focused on dealing with the whole COVID I'm a situation. part of the New South Wales community of
from the
outset,
CX
professionals, Services New South Wales,
and
were looking to consolidate the experience of visiting their websites in all sectors. So you could have a citizen who's clicking on the health site or clicking on the business site, and they'd be able to find some familiarity about
from the outset,
the site that they're visiting.
New South Wales.
But as I mentioned, because of the whole COVID situation, they then had to be
experience of visiting
fast and agile and adapt to the needs of the community at the time.
So you could have.
They combined quantitative and qualitative research to achieve that. And what they so what they did was they used Facebook.
Because of the
so
whole
they
COVID
didn't just look at numerical data like the thumbs up and thumbs down and how many clicks, but they did use that as well.
The community at the time.
They interviewed clients as well. And what was key to their success, and I guess this is part of the reason why New South Wales is being heralded as achieving a gold standard, is Facebook. That the team were so responsive and they were constant in their research. What they discovered pretty early on was that Australians were most concerned with economic impact, potential for recession, health services being unavailable, its impact on jobs, and being infected by COVID-19 was actually only a secondary concern. So responsive. What they were also doing is the whole team across the different sectors that were discovered doing this research and then creating the content and putting it out. They had each other on speed dial, and they were adopting into their approach to create, for example, COVID safe, their own ethnography that they were taking, that was taking place while they were going to their local gym or their local coffee shop or local businesses. They were actually picking up ideas from the community as well, and then bringing that back to their research team and saying, hey, you know, like, maybe we could use this. And so they were putting that in their package, their COVID safe package to the community.
Direct observation.
For example, COVID safe.
Brilliant. I really like this approach, particularly the involvement with interviews. I think our university has been trying to be very proactive in responding to students' needs during this time, but I think a lot of us are feeling survey fatigue, because it's just Likert scales and ticking boxes and off it goes, and it gets turned into quantified data, and it's not truly about the experience from the individual's perspective. And so you lose a huge amount of fine-grained, really important observational and experiential information that just gets translated into stats and statistics. Now, those are important for sure, but when you combine that with actually reflecting on what people are actually doing and actually experiencing, as you said, of course, because it's just,
I mean,
it's
with
just like
with the COVID, right? The infection rates, that's everywhere. You hear that data everywhere. But
and it's
what
not
do you do
truly
about that
the experience.
is much harder information to find.
And so you
And
lose
so, of course, that should be
huge amount of
fine-grained,
really
service-related pages. So I just think that's fascinating. And if
and
anyone missed it,
information
CX
that
stands
just
for
gets
customer
translated
experience
into
or
stats
client
and
experience.
statistics. Now, those are important for sure, but when you
and I just think
that,
this is
reflecting
really great,
on
and
what people are
I'm
actually
so
doing,
encouraged by the
actually
fact
experiencing.
that
As
as you said,
I mean, of
that
course,
Services New South Wales have had that, that gold standard
with
because
the COVID,
of their
right?
approach,
the infection rates,
and because they've been
everywhere.
listening
You hear
and
that data
observing
everywhere,
and participating.
But what do you
with people,
do about that?
Not just going, okay,
is
people
much
are
harder
giving
information
the thumbs
to
up,
find. And
how many interactions on this page today,
service-related pages. So
they're
I just think
actually
that's
reading through
and if anyone
the
missed
Facebook
it,
comments,
CX,
all the feedback that they were getting, so they were getting comments, for example, like give easily accessible advice on
really great, and
coronavirus payments for small business.
Encouraged by the fact that the
rather than trying to count
had
clicks.
that gold standard.
Exactly.
This
leads me right into the last topic that I wanted to chat with you today, which is about the way in which ethnography,
not just going, okay,
and particularly auto ethnography, has become a major part of what we can call the kind of new
today,
or
right?
Digital creative industries, and we're
reading
talking about YouTube and Instagram and Facebook,
all the feedback that they
and
were
all of the
getting,
social media platforms,
so they were getting comments,
where it's very easy,
like,
particularly our students who are exploring DAs and trying to
coronavirus
experiment with different
business,
types of contents and styles, to
yeah.
get bogged
Rather
down
than
in
trying
likes
to count
and to get
clicks.
bogged down
Exactly.
in views.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And miss the much more important layer of comments
which is
and
about
listening
the way in
to
which
your
ethnography,
participants. So they're not just fans,
particularly
not just
auto
following you.
ethnography
If
has
someone is
become
putting a
a
comment on your
major
video,
part of
they are
what we can
engaging
call
with you.
the
And
kind
if
of
you're not
new
responding to
or,
that, if you're not incorporating that into your production, if you're not thinking reflectively about the feedback that you're getting qualitatively,
and
you're
all
going to
of the
miss
social media
enormous amounts of
platforms
opportunity
where
to create
it's very
really
easy,
interesting content,
particularly our students who are exploring DAs and trying to experiment with different
sorry, go on.
and styles. To get
I was just
bogged
going to
down
add
in
that,
likes
sometimes
and to get bogged down in views,
you can go on to
and miss the much
a
more
YouTube channel or look
important
at a clip,
layer
and then if you scroll
of
down
comments
through the comments,
and
there's
listening to
there's diamonds
your
in
participants.
there
So they're not just
the community
fans, they're not
that's
just following you.
engaging
If someone is
with
putting
them,
a
but
comment
also
on your
for
video,
the creators of the
they are
content that,
engaging with you. And
that
if
have
you're
put the
not
click out there
responding
in
to
the
that,
first
if you're not
place.
incorporating
there's
that
going to be
into your production,
trolls, if you're not thinking
and there's going to be
reflectively about
that's
the
just the
feedback
reality. As you said, amongst the muck,
you're going to miss
right?
enormous
There will be
amounts of opportunity
diamonds
to
that you can
create
totally
really
use and
interesting
totally
content for
build
the
on.
audience that you already have.
I find,
and could have in the future.
particularly, I've got an honours student who's working on a
sorry, go
project
on.
looking at cancel
I was
culture in
just
the
going
beauty
to add
industry.
that,
And so I've been starting to watch beauty influencer YouTube videos, and it's just pure auto ethnography. Like, it's just pure, this is what's happening in my life, this is me. Okay, yes, I've got a product to sell, but that's not really the content of the video. The content is my experience with this product. So that leads to authenticity.
There's going to be trolls,
that leads to,
and there's going to be
an interesting
that's just
persona
reality
being created.
But as you said,
It
amongst the
leads
muck,
to a much
right?
more
There will be
engaging,
diamonds that you
experience
can totally
with
use
what
and
might be
totally
otherwise
build
just a
on.
kind of branded
I find
background
particularly,
experience.
I've got
I also
an
see this
student
a
who's
lot on
working
Twitter,
a
right, where we
project
see
looking at,
brands becoming
cancel culture in
personas.
the
Like,
beauty industry.
are you familiar with
And
the
so I've been
Wendy's
starting to
Twitter
watch
account?
beauty influencer,
Right, so
YouTube
the Wendy's
videos,
Twitter account
and
is
it's
this
just
fast food chain in the US.
auto ethnography.
And you don't
Like,
know
it's just
who's
pure,
operating the
this is
Twitter
what's
account,
happening in
but
my
they're
life.
they're
This is
using
me.
memes.
Okay, yes, I've
and
got a
they're
product to
engaging
sell,
in politics, and
but that's not really the
they're,
content
they're having
of the
fun
video.
with
The
their,
content
with
is
their,
my experience
competitors.
with this product.
It's an engaged
Yeah.
and
That leads
interesting
to
experience. It's not
authenticity.
just
That leads to
it's not just traditional
an
broadcast
interesting
media
persona
branding
being
and advertising
created.
anymore.
It leads to
And
a much more engaging.
we're even starting to see this in Twitch, live streaming,
might be otherwise
which
just
is
a kind of
like
branded
probably the cutting edge of kind of
background experience.
current auto
I also
ethnographic
see
techniques.
this a lot on Twitter, right, where we see
just
brands
broadcasting
becoming personas,
yourself
like,
to the world,
are
which
you
can be
familiar
quite
with the Wendy's
quite
Twitter
intimidating.
account?
No.
You know,
I find this hard enough, let alone streaming.
Is this fast food chain in the US.
Yeah.
And you don't know who's operating the Twitter account,
just add on
but
to
they're
your
using
remark
memes
about Twitter.
and they're engaging in politics.
I'm a tennis fan, and I
they're
try and watch all of the tennis opens and
competitors.
in particular, of course, the Australian Open, because here we are. And I catch myself reading the Oz Open Twitter feed. And and I think, this isn't the same person as last year, which is, I like what they're doing over here.
Current auto ethnographic techniques is this
incorporating memes now,
broadcasting yourself to the world.
So I get invested not just in the game, but
I find this hard
the
enough,
way
let alone
that
streaming.
It's being communicated and the way that they're getting people engaged on social media as well.
If I can just add on to I would love to know what their Twitter protocol is, right? Because as you say, you can detect a different voice, but they've probably done a lot of research to figure out what their Twitter protocol is, like what kind of topics, what kind of tone, what the conversation should be. There's probably a group of them planning the tweets in the background about what kind of experience they want their audience to have today. Like
this isn't the same person.
It's a very produced, but also more authentic at the same time, because it's live and it's in public, and you have to respond to immediate feedback.
Memes now,
like much more than just ratings in the past. You've got actual people telling you,
not just in the game,
what you should be doing in real time. And so
it's been.
This is why I think it's great that our students are working on Twitter. I would love working on blogs, working on YouTube, working on SoundCloud, working in public as they're doing their degree, because they're going to be hitting the ground running and working with the public once they get out into topics, into employment and the industry, because that's where it should be. There's probably a group of them planning the tweets in the background. Thank you. I know that was a kind of crash course on ethnography in the workplace and professional production, but I just wanted to say thank you to Susan for joining me in the conversation today, and we will see you on Discord later this week. Just and happy researching. You've got actual people telling you what you should be doing in real time, and so this is why I think it's great that our students are working on Twitter, working on blogs, working on YouTube, working on SoundCloud, working in public as they're doing their degree, because they're going to be hitting the ground running and working with the public once they get out into into employment and the industry, because that's where it is at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. I know that was a kind of crash course on ethnography in the workplace and in the professional production, but I just wanted to say thank you to Susan for joining me in the conversation today, and we will see you on Discord later this week, and happy researching. Thanks, Susan.
Thanks, Chris. Bye.
Bye-bye.